Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da!
Hi, and welcome to episode 48
Yes.
of Dungeons and Dopamine.
Well, that was weird. I said the whole thing with you. Sorry.
You did. How dare you,
I had
Jessica?
fun.
I'm Bree.
I'm
That's Jess.
She pointed at me.
I did.
This is a sign we just need to record this. We'll put a camera here. We'll put it up higher.
Yeah,
we
that's
like
fair.
that millennial better angle.
Mm-hmm. Gotta have like the emo from
Absolutely.
above.
I could cut my hair too.
Yeah, I could do
Where
a good
are
side
you?
sweep of my bangs, and
Yes.
then we're a live video podcast, emo style.
Emo video. I'm sure we can come up with something for that. Smash some words together.
I think we should dress completely goth.
Yes.
And then just continue to talk about our topics like normal. And just not be gothic at all.
Every once in a while, I'll take like bites of onions or something. Can't tell if they're emo or gothic or ogres. By the way, if I took a bite of an onion, I would immediately barf everywhere.
Same. In fact, it wouldn't even make it that close to my mouth. I'd be like, I can totally do this for a joke. Nope, can't do it.
I could eat a potato.
I could also eat a potato.
I figured.
That sounds way less gross, but just as weird.
Yeah. I actually love raw potatoes.
Same.
And I like to slice them up. I'll peel them, and then I slice them up, and then I put garlic salt and celery salt on top of them. This is probably something I made you eat when I was a kid.
Oh, or I made you eat because my memory of Nana is, Papa ate meat and potatoes every single day.
That's right, yes.
So Nana would have to prepare the potatoes every day. And
you go steal them while she's chopping
and
them.
she would feed a slice to each dog because we always had a bunch of dogs. And then to each kid who happened to be around, we would all just eat raw potatoes.
In my brain, you stood in a line from tallest to shortest, and she just fed you each one.
It was similar to that, yes.
Love it.
Number one, I don't think we've ever discussed this, which is weird. Number two, you're the only person I know besides Jody.
Yeah, because she was there.
Yeah.
She was in the line.
She was in the line. She was, before me because she was taller. Nobody else ever ate raw. Zach thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah. Ryan doesn't mind it. Carly thinks I'm absolutely bonkers.
Really?
And I'm like, you don't understand.
Look at that. Finding things in common even after 30-some years of friendship.
I'm sorry I called you middle-aged and myself.
Yeah,
it was
we're
worth
not
it for the
I don't
joke.
think... Is 40 still middle-aged?
I guess if you look at the age that people are living to, I think it's around 86-ish now. So I would say it's a little less than middle, if you want to be
super
on the line about it.
But it is close, I guess. We are approaching that middle age word.
I know.
Gross.
I used it for the sake of the joke and thought I made it so much better.
I mean, it was a good joke.
I also posted a video of goats coming in through a doggy door.
I saw that.
And I said something about it being your future after next Easter because
it is.
That's Connor's Easter gift.
Mm-hmm. Goats for everyone.
So I have a funny story that I wanted to tell you. It's a me story. Sorry.
It's like you're a podcast host or something.
I know, right?
Talking about yourself all the time.
Think of these things and save them specifically. So I was driving my kid to a school event, the one I previously told you about off air.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this running joke with her that when I forget to wear my ring, someone's going to propose. Because one time I was driving the car and I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to put my ring on. And I work from home and I podcast from my home and I don't usually put my ring on.
Right.
So
I also don't have my ring on.
Yeah,
today,
exactly. So the first time I did that, I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot my ring. And Carly was like, well, so what? And I said, well, someone's going to propose to me, obviously.
Duh.
They're not going to know I'm married to Dad. And so I said yesterday, oh, man, I forgot my ring. And then I showed Carly my empty finger, and she goes, oh, no, someone's going to propose to you. And then I said, man, I hope Pedro Pascal isn't there. And she goes, I hope he is.
She knows.
She's not a little wingman, apparently.
She's great.
So then we laughed really hard, and I told Ryan when we got home, and she looked at him and said, so what? I want to know what it's like to have a famous dad. And then my friends is my child in a nutshell.
I mean, I assume Pedro's very busy.
Oh, absolutely.
So he totally wouldn't mind if you guys got married and you just chose to stay here with Ryan and Carly.
Right.
And he could just pop in and visit every once in a while.
And fund all of the things that I want to do in
Well,
my
yeah,
home.
that would be helpful.
And come play D&D, because I bet he'd be a great D&D-er.
Yes.
Actors in general have to be
Right.
great D&D-ers.
You would hope so. Wouldn't it be so
Yeah.
disappointing if he wasn't? Like
I,
the only thing he can do is follow a script.
I roll to
Line.
you just hear him roll all of his dice. I'm in.
It would still be wonderful.
So we just had a discussion that I had to cut out by the magic of editing. That's going to be heard next week. And it has a controversial opinion.
It does. You know what else is controversial?
Not the Dogman of Michigan.
Not the Dogman of Michigan. But banning books is.
I cannot believe you're doing this.
It's time.
It
So I think we've talked about this on the podcast before about how I've been avoiding this topic, or we've been avoiding this topic because we were afraid it would make us too angry or too ranty. And I also just feared that I wouldn't really be able to do it justice because book banning does make me so angry. I have not researched it a ton because I don't like to research things that make me cranky.
Fair enough. This is about dopamine, not the lack of.
Right. To me, this is a really important topic. I don't really want to dance around important topics like this because we have a voice. We have a way to get our voice out to people. And so I don't always want to dance around the important topics. And, you know, obviously books are important, not just to us, but to everybody, and especially to us.
We have kids that are going to start learning, that have learned to read and are going to hopefully start wanting to read books.
Yes.
And we need to know what's up.
Mm-hmm. And I just a couple things I want to say about books, and then I will get away from the ranty part of it. Sharing of knowledge and information is really important, and especially nowadays with the internet and the connections we have. Anybody that's trying to ban books is really stomping on our freedom, which is supposedly one of the most important things to us as Americans. And banning books goes against the very first, it's our First Amendment right. That's what it's called. Our
All
First
I could
Amendment
think was
right.
the first Constitution after you said it. That was
Right.
it.
So this goes against our freedom of speech, our freedom, all kinds of our freedoms, and we're restricting knowledge. The other point I want to mention is that banning books, and what I've learned, the books that are being banned is mostly, sometimes it's because there might be something sexual in the book, there might be different lifestyles, but what we're doing is we're, again, stomping on our freedom and putting a block on knowledge, but we're also really, not we, but these people are using book banning as a way to take out representation in books. And I actually went to an author gathering last night. The book is called The Firekeeper's Daughter, and her name is Angelique Boulay. And she is a Native American author. It's a Native American book set in Sault Ste. Marie. So I just researched this yesterday. I was writing all this yesterday, and she spoke about how important it was to her to be a published author with a story about Native Americans, because there aren't very many Native American books and Native American authors out there. I want to say she said like less than 1% of new books each year contain a Native American character as like a first-person character or a main character. And of that 1%, less than that is actually written by Native American authors. And you see this in cultures, you see this with lifestyles, different lifestyles that might involve like gay families, so, you know, 2 mommies, 2 daddies, or especially people that are trans. So they don't want that in books, they don't want it spoken about, they don't even want teachers who are gay to be able to have a picture of themselves and their family on display, because they believe we are grooming children into these lifestyles by having these books and these narratives available. Which, number one, is ridiculous, because if I read a book about being a frog, that doesn't make me a frog any less than reading a book about a child with 2 dads makes me have 2 dads, or makes me want a lifestyle that I don't already have. It just doesn't make sense to me. Book banning is awful. It takes out the representation of children that might need that representation. So just because your kid doesn't have 2 moms at home doesn't mean that your kid's friend doesn't have 2 moms at home. And wouldn't it be nice if those children can read books about other characters that are like them, instead of only reading about white, straight characters that, you know, toe the line and do everything right all the time?
Have you ever, as a really, really basic, I guess, add-on to that, have you ever seen the little girls that go to Disney World and they're black-skinned and they see Tiana and they can't believe that there is a princess at Disney World that looks like them? I'm gonna cry.
Right. It is so important, and we're robbing children of this feeling of inclusion, and we're robbing children of this, you know, everybody has a need to belong. It doesn't matter who you are or who you were in high school and how much you wanted to pretend you didn't want to belong or you didn't care about belonging.
Okay, look. Stop coming at us.
Right? Every child needs that feeling, needs to know that they belong. And they may not have that at home, whether it's because they are different than their family, so they don't fit in with their family, or whether they don't fit in at school because their family looks different than their friends' families. Whatever it is, every book that I saw that is banned is taking away that information, taking away that representation, taking away helpful knowledge for, and I'm going to keep saying children, because typically when we see these book bans, it's overbearing parents that are trying to get these books out of schools. And number one, a lot of these books wouldn't be in like elementary school libraries or even middle school libraries sometimes. So I understand not wanting them maybe in school libraries, but these book bans don't just stop at the schools. They go to your public libraries. They go, you know, your high schoolers are having books banned. And these people are really trying to, I don't know, maybe keep their kids in a bubble and keep them from getting this information.
And I don't want a book ban at all, so maybe I'm speaking out of turn for these people, but it feels like they don't want to parent their kids.
Which brings me to my next point. So, number one, if you think that your middle schooler or high schooler don't know anything about sex, you're wrong. Because I guarantee you, whether or not you have raised them in a way that they would know that stuff, they are around other children that are talking about this stuff daily. You can't, unless you're, you know, homeschooling and keeping your kid in a safe little bubble, everybody is talking about it at that age. And I remember it when we were in school. And to imagine that the only place these kids are getting information is from these books that need to be banned, you're wrong. You're kidding yourself. There's the internet, there's friends, there's locker rooms. These conversations are being held. Honestly.
And they're joking about them.
Yeah, and they're talking about them in awful, disgusting ways. You know, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand how it works.
Stupid kids.
And I would much rather, so some of the Moss books are banned, especially Wings of Fury, I think, I think that's the book with chapter 55, which is amazing. But if I had a teenage daughter who, was 15, 16, 17 years old, I would rather have her reading these books and reading about healthy sexual relationships and actual sexual relationships where women are given pleasure and treated fairly and treated well than listening to whatever is going on in these locker rooms or hallways of these schools. And we also have very rarely banned books or movies or anything based on violence. And it's astounding to me that we are, as a society, so okay with letting our kids watch the Marvel movies or the X-Men movies or these movies that are all about violence and war and torture. And we're not okay with our 16-year-old girls reading about sex in a book.
Do you think it's because it's harder to talk to our kids about sex?
Probably.
Because as a country, it's easier to tell my kid, don't punch anybody in the face. Or, this violence on this television is fake and it is serious when it is real. Instead of don't be promiscuous, be careful what you wear, which I hate having to tell a child. Which I haven't had to tell my child, thankfully, because she's 7. But
right.
I know the day will come.
Or, we, as a country, we were built on kind of a puritanical situation. So it's in the past, it's changing a little bit, but we have been a very Christian-centered country, which does focus on abstinence and, waiting until you're married. And I can understand that, obviously, the Moss books don't do that. And I can see how that would be uncomfortable for parents. But also, again, wouldn't you rather be talking to them? I guess not. But for me, I would rather be talking to my son about consent and how to treat a partner and what sex really means and what can result from that and making healthy decisions there, than just hiding it all from him and hoping that he doesn't accidentally become a teenage dad at 17 years old because he doesn't know what's going on.
And these books are fiction.
Yes.
They're not real. And that's the first thing that I can tell my kid if she ever wants to read a book on this list is these are fake. Everything that happens in them is exaggerated or underplayed, depending on how you want to go about it.
And why isn't it our responsibility? Why are these people able to ban entire books or series of books from libraries when in reality, shouldn't it just be our jobs as parents to pay attention to what our kids are reading and make that choice, help them make that choice on if it is appropriate for their reading level and appropriate for their maturity, and then discuss the things that happen in those books to make sure that they understand, what they're feeling or what's going on?
Obviously not.
Exactly. And if you are the type of parent that doesn't want to have these conversations, then you should be letting your children read these books because at least they're going to get the information somewhere. And in a book, at least, it's probably relatively good information versus whatever they could find on the internet or on Reddit or
there was a trend back shortly after we were out of high school where it was actually they were making pacts with each other to have babies.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I want my kid to learn.
Right.
Instead of, some winged sex god.
Right. So let's let them watch Teen Mom on MTV, but don't let them read The Giver by Lois Lowry.
I have nothing.
Have you
to
read
say.
The Giver?
I love The Giver.
So The Giver is on a few lists of the 100 most. It's not necessarily always banned, but challenged and banned books. And do you want to know why The Giver is on this list?
Yes.
It says that there is violent content related to euthanasia, suicide, infanticide, and sexually suggestive content. Do you remember any sexually suggestive content in The Giver?
No.
I think there might have been like one part where he talks about maybe like feeling tingly when he doesn't take his medication that's supposed to suppress everything, but I don't even think it gets any further. I don't think it uses any words. And again, these are important topics. And if you think your high schoolers aren't ready for topics like this, you are underestimating and you're holding your children back, because these are important topics. Another book that gets challenged a lot, which I've actually read, it's called Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, and it's by Jonathan Safran Foer. And this book is actually, the narrative is a 9-year-old whose dad died in the 9/11 attack. And he's autistic, and he's trying to deal with his grief and still connect to his family and deal with grief that is from like nationwide trauma and a huge event. And also in this book, there's like a small little, it's a 9-year-old, so whatever he's reading is not sexual, but there are some like sexual connotations to things. And also it's too depressing. And that's why this book has been challenged and people believe it should be banned, because a book about a 9-year-old experiencing grief has a little bit of sexuality in it, and it's sad.
So we should pretend that 9/11 didn't happen, because I'm not gonna lie, around 9/11 when videos and stories start spreading, I get pretty depressed when I read those.
Mm-hmm. Nope. Teenagers.
I'm obviously not yelling at you,
I know.
by the way.
Children cannot read depressive things, obviously. It might make them sad. Another book that is often challenged or banned is actually Anne Frank, Diary of a Young Girl.
That makes me... Oh my God, that makes me so mad.
And again, it's because it's sad, it's depressing, and if you remember, there's like one passage where she starts to talk about like how she's growing up and starting to feel like sexual desires for, it must be somebody that's hiding in the attic with her or someone she knew before that. But no, that should be banned. Our children should not know the true story of, things that actually happened in history.
Can I also just point out that everything about the Holocaust is sick and grotesque and makes my heart hurt. Like, to the point where if you showed me pictures right now, I would probably start weeping.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't my kid learn about that so she knows?
I think so.
And so she understands that is why we don't, single people out. That's why we don't judge people by their race or their religion or their skin color. Well, no, I guess some races aren't different color skins, but why? I'm going to jump out my second story window. Please excuse me. My cat survived. I'm sure I will.
Here are some funnier ones, which Connor would be very disappointed. Apparently, Captain Underpants by Dave Pilkey has some violent imagery and encourages disruptive behavior. I don't know if you've ever read any Captain Underpants books, but it does literally, it's some of the best children's writing I've ever seen. He writes as children, so sometimes the words aren't, they're making comic books, the words aren't spelled right. It's very easy for Connor to read. He does what he calls flipporamas, which you just hold the page and you turn it, flip it back and forth really fast, and it looks like a flip book.
Oh, I love flip books.
And all of the violence in all of these books is these are cartoon books. It's a made-up character called Captain Underpants. And all of his violent chapters are prefaced with, "This is an incredibly violent flipporama chapter." And it's just these flipporama pages where it's like a robot bonking someone on the head, or a Captain Underpants like flinging someone away. None of it is actually violent. None of it is awful. And the two main characters, George and Harold, are disruptive little boys, but they're good humans. They're nice kids, and it has been incredible for Connor to see these children that are maybe a little disruptive and ADHD and creative. Connor has connected to these books more than anything. These books are what got my 7-year-old to enjoy reading.
Well, as a mom, can't you stop while you guys are reading when he interrupts his teacher and you say, "Oh, do you remember when you got in trouble for interrupting the teacher? He's going to get in trouble, isn't he?"
Exactly. And the boys always do get in trouble, and then of course something happens and they have to save the world, so everything goes back to normal. But there are always consequences, and these have opened up great conversations for me and my kid. But, we can't have children reading about other children that might have disruptive behavior.
Well, we just don't want them to get any ideas.
Scary Stories by Alvin Schwartz has been banned. That's the scary stories to read in the dark that we've been reading since childhood. Apparently there is some violence in those scary stories.
I will say, and I don't blame the book at all, I remember going on a field trip where they read these to us, and that story scarred me. One of them did.
Fair. They were kind of creepy.
The guy eats himself.
Oh, yep. That's fair.
But I don't blame the book, and it hasn't affected my life in any way, except I might have missed a little bit of sleep or woke my parents up from bad dreams when I was 6.
Right. Did you read Julie of the Wolves? I feel like that was a book we both read.
I don't recall it.
Apparently there is one specific scene in which Julie's husband assaults her, and so they want the whole book banned instead of being able to talk about violence and aggression and how not to be in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Most of the Goosebump books are considered too scary, or they have some occult in them, so they can't be in schools. Do you remember the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret?
I do. I don't remember reading it, but I know it. Of it, at least.
This is the book I always quote when people today talk about, books today are too sexualized, or music or whatever. I remind them that I read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret in 5th grade, and that's where I learned what the word horny meant. But apparently Judy Blume was really good at getting her books banned because of stuff like this. But really what her books are is they're coming-of-age books. They're books for teenagers about normal things that teenagers are experiencing and going through, and body changes and relationship issues.
And can you imagine some of these books helping kids whose parents won't speak to them about this kind of thing?
Exactly. So I started to say earlier and then I stopped. Not all adults are safe adults.
Yeah.
So taking out these books, you're not only keeping your own child from reading about, green M&Ms make people horny. You're also taking it out of the little girl or taking it away from the little girl down the road who doesn't have a mom at home and doesn't have anybody to talk about with these things and might only get this information from books. Other types of books that they always try to ban is anything basically that talks about the human body or the changes that teenagers go through or how babies are made. So one book is just called Where Did I Come From? And it explains sex. So of course it can't be in schools. Harriet the Spy was once banned because it talks about kids being naughty. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary has been banned and challenged in schools because they contain words that are sexual in nature, such as oral sex. Well, that was the only one that I wrote down. But apparently that's not age appropriate, so the dictionary should not be in classrooms. And then two of my favorite books that this is ridiculous to me. Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. It was challenged by parents in Kansas because they believed it was unnatural for animals to talk. They went so far as to say that showing lower life forms with human abilities is sacrilegious and disrespectful to God. And then Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah.
Everybody's favorite childhood book. Apparently, due to Max being sent to bed without dinner, it was promoting child abuse. And then, obviously, the elements of witchcraft and supernatural events in the book, because he visits an island of monsters.
See, now, okay, so last week you promised you wouldn't make me feel disappointed in everyone all the time, everything.
You're right.
And you
And
lied.
I failed.
I ban you.
And I picked these books specifically to illustrate how ridiculous this book banning has got. I mean, I know there are books out there that people don't agree with. There are some crazy books that I will talk about again someday. But by allowing book banning and by pushing book banning, this is what we're ending up with, people. We are ending up with people that don't think animals should talk in books and that children should not be sent to bed without dinner. I don't know. So
these people hate Disney movies? Because a lot of animals talk in Disney movies. Or
That's
do they
what I
go
don't
home
understand.
and show these movies to their kids without any issue? Tell me.
Good questions. So that went a little bit longer than I thought, and it was a little bit more disorganized than I planned on because
I interrupted.
Well, that and it's a hard topic to talk about without getting like irrationally angry. But stop banning books for children just because you don't
Stop banning
believe
books about the Holocaust because they make you sad, because the Holocaust should make you sad.
And it's okay for our children to be sad.
It's our job to teach them how.
Yeah.
Right. So actually I have a really sad thing to talk about too. Sorry, guys.
So episode 48 is the sad episode.
If this was Friends, it would be the episode where everyone is sad. I don't know. I don't have a good way to change over to this. So, you remember the Michigan Triangle?
Yes.
Do you remember the Lady Elgin?
Yes.
It was a ship.
I kind of figured that.
Good job. That's all. Okay, bye.
There was a ship
It's good
in
thing
the
you went
triangle.
long, 'cause I'm done. Well, I do recall telling you that the Lady Elgin had the tea. It was a very dramatic ship. In fact, when I looked this up to research it more, after I got all my historical facts, I literally searched Lady Elgin drama.
Yay.
And I just want to remind everyone, this ship is currently in the bottom of Lake Michigan. It is closer, I think, to Chicago. But as we as Michiganders so selfishly claim the lake as our own, it is named after us anyway. This is still a Michigan story. So
It all belongs to us.
exactly. Just like the dog man. He protects it. So, the Lady Elgin, she was built in 1851. I will be referring to her as a she because that is what you're supposed to do with ships.
Yep.
When she was built, she cost $95,000, which is now $3,479,280.
Thank you for adding that.
Absolutely. That is a very important fact to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know how accurate those always are, but I do feel like that was a lot of money back then. She was named after the wife of Lord Elgin, Canada's Governor General, from 1847 to 1854. She was a passenger side wheel steamer. So we've seen steamboats with the back paddle. This had it on the side.
Neat.
Which would have been really cool to see.
Right.
And I know that there is an absolutely practical way. Were there wheels on both sides, or did she just go in circles?
Good question. I'm going to need you to research that. Thank you.
I saw pictures. I just didn't pay attention. I'm terrible. I'm
now
a terrible
that I'm thinking about
it. She was rated first class, so she was considered a very classy and high-end steamer to get across the lake. But she had a rough run. And I'm going to read this little excerpt straight from Wiki because I think it sums it up really well, and I didn't feel like I could do a better job. During Lady Elgin's career, she was involved in numerous accidents. She sank and was repaired in 1854 after striking a rock at Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which, by the way, is the other point of the triangle. Just a fun fact. In 1855, she was towed to Chicago after an accident to her machinery. In 1857, she was damaged by fire. In June 1858, she struck a reef at Copper Harbor, Michigan. In August 1858, she was stranded in Ausable Point Reef in Lake Superior.
I feel like at some point they should have just retired her.
And it doesn't end there either. In October 1859, she was towed to Marquette, Michigan after breaking her crossbeam. In November 1859, she was towed again when her crank pin broke near Point Iroquois, Michigan. Put simply, in 1860, the Lady Elgin was rammed by another ship and sank very quickly on a terrible stormy night. But we here at Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast don't just do simply. So we laugh and I joke, but actually this is considered still to this day one of the worst, possibly the worst accident that's ever happened on Lake Michigan. It was terrifying. And it was shrouded in I wrote directly, buttload of rumor, gossip, and mystery. So.
And what year was this?
The year it sank was 1860.
Okay.
So, some people claim it was cursed from the first time it launched in 1851, as the boilers and the engines were salvaged from a slaving vessel called the Cleopatra. It was an ocean vessel that was used in wars, and it was accused of, and I quote, tearing humans from their homes and selling them as chattel in a foreign land. So, some people said that the ship was bound to fail from the moment they put those parts on it.
I mean, if you're going to be haunted, that's a good reason to be haunted.
Exactly. And slavery actually wound up being a very prominent part of the ship's history, because even after the parts were installed and the Cleopatra was, like a rumor, the southern states at the time were leaving the Union. And Wisconsin and Michigan were also leaving the Union, but for the opposite reason. We were openly against slavery. Yay,
good for us.
Yes.
Yay, Michigan.
The governor of Wisconsin was openly criticizing the government and the president, calling him useless, but was also fighting militia in his state that didn't agree with him.
Oh, he was busy.
He was a busy dude. He did catch several Wisconsin men who were getting ready to leave and join the fight in the South. When he caught them, he took their weapons, and they got mad, and they boarded the Elgin, and they were on their way to join a campaign to raise money for new weapons. Ew. But these men and the restlessness of the country as a whole led to a lot of talk about the accident not actually being an accident, and it was sabotage.
Dun, dun, dun.
Bum, bum, bum. All right, Ryan, that's your job right there. Argyle Pigeon, get to
it.
You're just going to put in.
He's just going to put in more of you and I going, dun, dun, dun.
I mean, that is a thing for us. So, on September 7th, 1860 was the day the Lady Elgin went down. She was headed north from Chicago with about 300 excursionists, as this article put, and 50 ordinary passengers and a crew of 35 officers. A huge steppy I just go into a sick rat.
That would be amazing.
I would love to
I would be so jealous.
Or it would be really bad. You'd be like, we are not going to be able to use this content. This is going to be a blooper.
Just scratch this whole episode.
I'm leaving. I'm not coming back for the Halloween stuff. A large September... Oh my gosh, why is this so hard? A large September storm blew in while the Elgin was moving along. At 2 a.m., the storm was at a full gale, And the captain was pretty much unconcerned. He was a veteran captain, and he just, let's barrel on.
He's like, this is fine.
Yeah,
No
I've
big
done
deal.
this before. I don't know if he's always the captain of the Elgin, which his cavalier attitude may explain the issues that she's having.
It's like, man,
He's like,
this is nothing compared to the last time.
last time they set fire. Anyways, sorry, that is a terrible joke. Unfortunately, at 2:30 a.m., a lumber schooner called the Augusta barreled into the side of the Elgin. I quoted from a website called wanderingeducators.com, which had some incredible articles on some of these shipwrecks. If you're interested in them, I would suggest checking them out. And it says, Darius Malott captained the Augusta, and he was traveling down lake on Lake Michigan with a heavy load of lumber he had picked up in Port Huron. His crew may have been busy getting the sails reefed and the ship under control and simply failed to spot the lights of the Lady Elgin in time to avoid the disaster. Captain Malott ordered the wheelsman to put the wheel over hard to starboard to bring the schooner around to the wind. I don't know why that series of words is hard to put together, but it is. The Augusta turned, but too slowly to prevent her from slamming hard into the Lady Elgin and driving a hole in the Lady Elgin's hull at the midship gangway, just forward of the wheel. So the Augusta was pretty badly damaged, so the captain just limped it to Chicago. He claimed he didn't know that it was so badly damaged, which yes. We will talk about this captain a little bit later, but yes. Captain Wilson, the captain of the Elgin, was trying to bring the ship to shallower waters, and he ordered the crew to throw cargo and unfortunately cattle that was being transported overboard, which I get. Yep. Unfortunately,
gotta save the humans and leave the cattle.
But it made me sad. I almost left it out, but it is kind of a big part. I mean, it shows how afraid they were.
Right.
So he wanted to get the hole above the water line, and he ordered his some of his crew, I think it was 15 of his crew, to get into a lifeboat, get into the water, and try to shove mattresses and stuff into the hole to try and keep it from sinking so quickly.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
kinda.
Yeah, it was a great idea, but somehow in like the mayhem of getting into the boat, none of these men noticed they didn't have any oars. So they couldn't control. Yeah.
Sorry. Not funny, but
I know, but
also.
I mean, really, it's absurd. One crewman that was still on the ship threw a single oar into the boat, and then the boat disappeared.
Oh, no.
So the ship started sinking, and people kind of descended into mayhem. They were ripping up floorboards and doors. It was pretty clear at this point that they weren't gonna make it anywhere.
Right.
So they were getting chaotic. They were grabbing anything. There was a story of a man who had played in a drum corps. He cut open his giant drum, and he sat in it and floated all the way safely to shore, which was freaking genius.
I love that so much.
But they were ripping doors off and anything that would float.
Mm-hmm.
When the ship sunk, these people were still in the middle of a September storm in Lake Michigan.
Oh, no.
And so they were holding on to their whatever floating thing they managed to get. But the waves were so strong that they were going over people's heads and washing them off of their like makeshift rafts.
Their doors.
Yep. And then even if you stayed on your raft, there was always a really good chance that something hazardous in metal or wood was going to come up and hit you in the head. And so people were expiring. And yeah, and scary. I mean, I don't know, you don't hear well when you're out in water like that. Having water over your head is terrifying.
Right.
And I can't imagine you
in the middle of a storm.
And cold. It's going to take your breath right out of you. Anyway, so moving on. The people in the lifeboat, the crewmen, actually use that one single oar as a rudder, and crashed to land. All 15 in the boat lived. They ran to a home nearby the shore and woke up everyone they could, and then rescue efforts began. It was several hours before people started washing up on shore. It was a lot of bodies. Only 95 living people made it to the beach.
Oh my gosh.
One quote, and I'm probably misquoting this, so I'm going to say this is the vague translation of the quote. I heard it in one of the videos. A lot of the people who survived wrote their kind of tales down, and they're fascinating. It's a very scary depiction when they talk about being in the storm. I was really moved by it. But they said that as they looked out over the beach, this was a rescuer, I guess I should start with that. This was someone who was there for the rescue efforts. Okay. She said she looked out over the beach and it just looked like a beach made of human hands because there were so many bodies.
Oh my gosh. That's awful.
Yes, terrible. Over half of the survivors died within 100 feet of the shore because of our Lake Michigan undertow. And they were exhausted. Cow. So it
just shot them right back out. Oh my, I didn't even think of that.
Can you imagine? You'd see the shore, it would be so close. And
you're like, I made it. And then the undertow was like, nope.
Yeah. It breaks my heart. Many of the people who survived were naked because of the undertow. It stripped them of their heavy woolen dresses and stuff like that. Wow. 297 bodies were recovered. The crash and all of the dead created 1,000 orphans.
Holy cow.
It's unreal. So, I told you we'd come back to this. The Augusta and the entire crew and the captain became a pariah. At one point, a group of men headed to the docks. They were going to avenge the dead, but the Augusta made it out of port on time to avoid the fight. No one would hire them. And so I read two different stories. One said that the Augusta was sold and the crew went on to captain a different ship. And one story said that it was renamed. And I would believe if it was renamed that people believed maybe it was sold, and maybe that's where the tale got kind of twisted.
Right. Because they didn't want
the stigma. Yeah. But
they're like, no, we totally got rid of that one.
Yeah, that's a goner,
This is our new ship.
Exactly.
Like the Titanic all over.
Exactly. We did not sink that. But the ironic thing is that 3 years later, in 1863, Captain Mallet commanded another ship, the Major, and it sank in Lake Michigan. The captain did not survive, and in a strange twist of fate, his bones are believed to have come to rest within 10 miles of the Lady Elgin.
Really?
The ship was like, screw you, bruh.
Get back here. Captains go down with their ships.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, going back to the very large amount of bodies washing up onto the beach, it was really overwhelming for the area. Obviously, that influx of death is hard to handle for a coroner who might see 1 or 2 bodies a day.
Or less.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, most of the bodies were never identified in Chicago. This information is from mysteriousschicagO.com, which was a great article as well. And some of this I am going to quote directly because it is kind of interesting. Those who were not taken, the bodies were not identified and taken away, were buried in a unmarked grave. It was approximately 27 bodies. And then there was another mass grave in another town. The town was called Highwood. And, as these bodies were being readied to be identified or readied to be buried, a lot of people pickpocketed them. Yeah.
Of course they did.
This is why we can't trust people.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Exactly. And also shows that even in the 1800s, people were not nice.
Right.
So people would pretend to be family, and they would walk through these rows of people and just pick their pockets. And because it was a first-class steamer, there were a lot of wealthy people.
Right.
Also, I do wonder, how much of it could be true that they were naked when they showed up on shore, because if they were, then there'd be no pockets to pick.
Right.
Just semantics. I don't know. Maybe enough of that. I mean,
at least some of them were
297.
not getting their pockets pickpocketed.
Oh, terrible. Okay. Now, there was an article in 1899, and it talked about one of the victims who had been pickpocketed, who now, well, I don't know if she's still there, but at that point haunted the graves.
Good. I'm glad.
Exactly.
Good for her.
In the 1870s, they were going through a mini boom of houses in Highwood, and people would report seeing a beautiful woman in a black gown that was dripping with water. She was wearing a gold chain on her neck and diamond earrings in her ear, and was often seen waving her hands as if to drive the builders away. She was particularly said to haunt the site of one particular construction site, where the house was never completed, which is probably because she was there waving them off.
She was like, get out. This is mine.
And there was a man in the article. These people had found a man who had recognized her. Like, he saw the ghost, and he had been rescuing that day and recognized the woman. One thing I did forget to mention and forgot to put in my notes, but is in my head still, a lot of people died during the rescues because they were going out into these really awful conditions.
Yeah.
One man was about to call it a day and realized there were a lot of women and children still struggling in the water, and he went out to help, and a tree branch or something fell on him and crushed his skull.
What are the chances?
I know, it's horrifying. So
not fair, people. Not fair.
No, right? He was trying to be a good dude. So that is the sad story of the Lady Elgin. I know it is very sad, and I am not trying to make it less sad, but it is fascinating. Because it's right here. This sounds like something that wouldn't happen in our Lake Michigan. We've been in Lake Michigan.
Right. This is it's like the Titanic story.
Yes.
Like you expect this in the ocean and these great big ships that, travel across the ocean with all these passengers. You don't expect it in Lake Michigan.
Right. It'd be like if we heard about one of our ferries not making it across.
Right.
It would be like, no, that's not real. That can't be real. We don't do that.
And this is not something, so you and I have both lived in Michigan our entire lives.
Right.
And this is not something that gets talked about at all.
No, I would have loved to learn about this in high school. Just some of the information about how cool our lakes are.
Yeah. Our local history. Good job, us.
You like to pretend that only me and Ryan do that,
but it's really us.
So I found it fascinating. I did have 10 pages of notes again, which is on my phone, which only turns into 5 when you look at it on my tablet, which, that's not
fair.
So bad.
It's totally normal.
I did find some really great YouTube videos about this. One of them had a lot of people reenacting and reading the quotes and the information about what survivors had said, like the lady that was looking at the beach and such. And those are really powerful.
I can't imagine. And it wasn't that long ago that the bridge in Baltimore crashed and fell. So, thinking about a boat hitting, like that boat hit a particular place in a bridge and caused a huge catastrophe. I can't imagine like a boat hitting another boat and then being like, I'm sure it's fine. We can totally make it.
Right. Yeah, no, it's wild. It blows my mind, but it is wildly interesting. Yeah. And, just a little, I guess, like nod to the rescuers. I know they're long gone, but that is a big deal. One guy sent out his whole family to rescue people.
Oh my gosh.
His sons, they tied ropes to the people out going into the water, and they left one person on land to pull them back in and
try to avoid the undertow.
Rescuing a panicking drowning victim is actually very scary in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're not thinking logically, and it's crazy.
It's like the number one warning when you're like learning how to rescue people in the
Yes.
water is to, sometimes you have to give up and let them go because their panic
Yep.
can take both of you out.
And that's not going to help anybody.
And
Now
then-
2 people are dead.
And I always forget how strong our undertow is.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about other lakes or oceans to know if that's common, but I
Right.
don't think it is.
I think Lake Michigan's kind of special in that way because it is so big.
Yeah.
And yeah, we get taught from like elementary school
Yeah.
how to handle and how to swim. Our schools do swimming lessons because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And
I, every year we have. And this
every year
is-
at least one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
well, more than one.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, I don't know if that's an actual statistic, but many times the people that we do lose in Lake Michigan every year are from out of state or at least out of town, somewhere where they don't have a great big
Such a
lake
strong
like
undertow.
what we have.
Yeah. So that is the Lady Elgin. I'm really excited to have brought you guys the story. It was really fun. But that's the end. And this has been Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and even on YouTube.
You can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can also find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit.
You can reach out to us on any of those social medias, and we'd love it if you do.
Please.
Or you can reach out at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for holding on through this very sad, angry episode.
Episode was better than sadness, but it was very sad.
And there's our title.
We said it.
Yay.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Okay, bye.